Welcome back. This is attempt number 2 at the video for how to replace the oil pressure sensor screen or filter that sits beneath it when that gets clogged. My first attempt at the video, I was having some trouble with the camera and I actually got the size wrong for the bolt that I recommended using. I had 2 sitting on my tool bench and I grabbed the wrong one, unfortunately. But hopefully this will help you a bit more now that I can get better views and have the correct size for the bolt. So here's what you'll need before you try to get underneath the oil pressure sensor to replace it. And this is a fix instead of taking it into a dealership or shop where it can cost up to $1,000 and 5 to 6 hours to repair this, because the actual GM guideline for replacing this apparently says to remove the intake manifold to get to the oil pressure sensor. So here's what you'll need for tools to get this fixed. Now, to remove the actual oil pressure sensor itself, I've seen online that they recommend a 27mm socket, but I picked up a 1 1/16 inch deep well. I have a 1/2 inch U-joint, and since I don't have any 1/2 inch extensions, dropped it down to a 3/8 inch and then have a 3/8 inch extension and socket. You will need a 15mm angled box wrench, and I'll show you why you want that angle in a minute. You'll need either a 10-inch wrench or 10mm wrench, excuse me, or a 10mm deep well socket. You'll want your GM fuel line removal tool. And here's what I got wrong last time. This is actually a 5/16 bolt that you'll want to pull out the oil screen underneath the sensor. So I have a 5/16 5-inch. So first step, what you'll want to do to make room is you'll want to be able to lift up this wire loom. To do so, you need to remove this nut, that's a 10mm, and you'll need to remove this post for the engine cover. When you do that, then you'll be able to lift this up to get one of the lines out of your way in a bit. So you want to get these 2 plastic vacuum lines out of here to make room so that you can reach in the back of the engine. They don't just lift off like this. I already had them off because I don't want to waste your time with me struggling with these. To remove them, this first one, both ends have the same style clip. You just push in, you just push one side in. You can see right there, it pops that out of the way. And then you can pull it straight off. Same thing with the other end. It's a little bit smaller, but you just push that in, and then it pulls right off the post. So there's line 1 out of your way. Line 2 is the reason that you want to be able to lift this up. Line 2 lifts off back there, but it has a little bit different mechanism to lock it in place. It has this little tab right here that you have to lift up and then pull it back to unlock it. It lifts off easier than that first one, but if it's cold, it will also snap very easily. I found that out when I first did this in about 5 below weather in the garage, and I wound up having to get a replacement line the next day. Now, to get it out of your way completely so you don't accidentally break it, you'll have to lift this up and turn this under, and then you will be able to pop it out right here. So you'll be able to pop that out and get the entire vacuum hose out of your way. Now, with that vacuum hose out of your way, you can deal with this fuel line right here. the fuel line, just pull this clip off first. It just pulls right off. And then you'll take your handy tool, slide it around your fuel line, and slide it around your fuel line, push in securely, and it'll slide that fuel line right off. Now, before you do that, you'll want to get a rag or paper towels, something under there. There we go. That's pushed in, and here's why. Because all that fuel that's sitting in the fuel line is going to drain out. So be sure you have that in there so you don't soak everything with fuel. Let that drain a bit, help it. Okay, that's mostly drained. And now all those parts and wiring isn't covered in fuel. Now here is where the 15 mil ratchet comes into play. Let me move the light here so I'm not in its way. There we go. You can see right behind that fuel line is that little paddle looking thing. I'm not positive on its function. I think it may be for lowering the engine into here. It may be basically just like a lift strap. But that is held into place by one 15 millimeter bolt right here. I, again, already had it out so that it's not, you're not sitting there watching me try to get the angle on it. The reason that I said you want, well, ideally you want to be able to have an angled ratchet is so that you can get down there. The bolt is held in right down here, and it's kind of difficult to get a straight ratchet on it. And it's even more difficult to get a socket on it. I don't even know if you can. But once you have that out, then this it just pulls straight out. Just has that little pin right there that fits into a hole in the back of the engine, and there's where your bolt goes. So I'm going to pause it right now, get myself off this uncomfortable position laying on my engine, and I'll start back up in a second. Now that I've restarted, I've already got the clip on top of the oil pressure sensor and back. I've got that off. The way to get that off from a blind position is to feel for the square edge of the fuel pressure sensor or the oil pressure sensor clip. See, the whole back side is rounded. The front side is squared off right here. Just press in on the square side and it pulls off without any, it pulls straight up off the top without any fuss. So I'm going to get the socket on top of the oil pressure sensor and I'll restart the video. Okay, I've got the socket on the oil pressure sensor in back there. Let me see if I can give you a clear view of it all the way down to the bottom. You'll want to do it without having the ratchet on the end and maybe even without the extension on there, just because it's still kind of hard to wiggle around back there. Let me get the light remounted, and then I'll remove that for you here. I'm going to pause this quick and try it try to at least break it free. It's not very tight, but it's awkward holding a camera and doing it. All right, oil pressure sensor is out, just this little guy. There's a little hole in the bottom that reads the pressure, and where it clips into the top, just a simple 3-pin. Now is when you use your 5/16 bolt. Again, that's a correction from my first run at the video that had the horrible camera angles. 5/16 bolt, and I used a 5-inch. This one can get a bit awkward because you have to reach in there from a blind position, just insert it into that hole back there, and try to thread it down into the middle of the filter screen. It pops out relatively easy, and you don't want to jam it down in there because you don't want to puncture that screen unless you have a replacement. Now, as far as the replacement goes, if you are replacing it and not just cleaning it, be sure to let AutoZone or Car Parts or wherever you get it from, it's only about $6. Be sure to order it a day or two ahead of time, or Amazon, whatever. Be sure to order it a day or two ahead of time because it's not something they stock. Despite how common this problem is, I was shocked to find that they didn't stock it the first time I pulled it. So I'm going to get that pulled out, then I'll show you the filter screen after the break. All right, well, it was a little bit easier getting my hand around there this time than the first time I took it off. It only took maybe 30 seconds to do at most. It's real easy to get the bolt into the hole. The bolt actually slides into the filter screen, and all you got to do is give the bolt a couple turns once it's in there. And it's enough to be able to give you a bit of leverage to pull it out. You don't want to jam that bolt in with everything you got because you'll destroy the screen if you're going to clean it and reuse it. Now, you may ask yourself, Lucas, you already did this before. Why are you doing it again? I run seafoam in my crankcase. I got this Tahoe used. It's got the standard 6-liter V8 hybrid Tahoe. I got this used at about 90,000 miles, and the first thing I did after I got it is I ran seafoam top engine cleaner through the intake, and instantly it started blowing blue smoke out the back after that. And I've been putting seafoam in the crankcase with every oil change and ran seafoam top engine cleaner a couple more times in it once more with each oil change as well. Doing that breaks up a ton of crap gunked up on the inside of the engine. So that's where all those little particulates get clogged in this screen and the oil gets real dirty, and then it can't read the oil pressure properly through this. That's why the oil pressure seems real soggy. So you step on the gas, you can see the gauge respond a little bit, it goes up, but then it goes down even more. You step on the gas, goes up, goes down even more. You step on the gas, goes up, goes down even more, until you get that dreaded dummy light in the dash cluster, and if it hits 0, then it will start dinging at you. If memory serves correct, it's a P0521 error that it starts throwing. So I'm going to clean this one up. I'm actually planning on replacing the oil pressure sensor screen the next time I do this, which will be after a 2,000 mile drive, but I'm going to use this one once more. Now, something else I learned, if you use brake cleaner to clean this up, be sure to take that little O-ring off of there before you do it. I apologize, not brake cleaner, the carbon choke cleaner. It will loosen that up. It will tighten up a bit over time, but it will loosen it up quite a bit. So roll that O-ring over the end and then clean the heck out of it. So I'll be back to finish this up after I get this cleaned. Okay, we're back with a clean screen. I actually didn't take the O-ring off at this time, but I just avoided it when I sprayed it down with carbon choke cleaner, and then I actually used just some liquid dish soap, Dawn, with a stiff bristled paintbrush that I cut most of the actual brush itself off, so the bristles are about the length of a toothbrush. But you can see how much cleaner this is. You can actually see through the screen now. You can see daylight through the screen if you try. Still a little bit of crud down in the bottom, but compared to how clogged and nasty it was before, it looks great. I don't anticipate there being any errors, any more codes coming up, at least for quite a while. But I'm going to continue running Seafoam in the crankcase. I don't think I'm going to do any more of the top engine treatments because it's running well now. The engine's smoothed out, but I will be doing this again, I'm certain. Like I said, I'll be pulling this and cleaning the screen again after my trip in a few weeks. Hopefully this helps out. Now when you put it back in that hole, it's real easy to get in there. You just drop it in and it just kind of, when you press down on it a little bit, it kind of clicks into place as that O-ring falls into its groove. You don't got to really jam it down again. If you do have any holes in this lower screen, be sure that you do not continue using it. Get a replacement screen, or get a replacement little filter screen again. It's only like $5 or $6. So this one, these lower screens here at the end of it, those filter out the crap from the engine, and it passes through those up into this upper chamber where the oil pressure sensor in the top keeps or checks the pressure, and then I believe it passes through here, through these upper screens, to the active fuel management system. So getting this clean can also, it also does create 1/2 to 1 gallon per mile improvement in your fuel economy. I did notice that after the first time that I replaced it. I also saw the electric start kicking on a lot more in the city when I was downtown working. So I'm going to pop this back in, get everything put back together, and then close up. Now, something else I failed to mention in my last video that I just noticed is in the bottom of the oil pressure sensor, you got the hole with the pin where it actually checks the pressure. Sorry, the light's kind of blinding it. But something I didn't do before is try to clean that out. So give that a blow in there and you'll see. I already wiped it out a couple times, or blew it out a couple times before the video. You can see there is oil residue in there. So I'm going to give it a quick shot with carbon choke cleaner, let it air dry, and then I'll be putting it back in place. Now a quick recommendation on getting that little paddle back into place there is to actually get the bolt started and then worry about trying to get that pin in there. Once the pin is in, then you can hold the paddle in place with your left hand and tighten it down. Tighten that bolt down finger tight with your right hand, and then come back with your 15 millimeter ratchet and get that tightened down. Again, it wasn't really cranked down. It wasn't cranked down real hard when the first time I took it out, so there's no need to put all your muscle into it to get it tightened down. Just get it nice and snug, and then you're good. Now once you get that bracket back in place, after the filter screen and the oil pressure sensor and the wiring harness on top of the oil pressure sensor, the next thing you're going to want to put back in will be this. I did the oil or the fuel line there just because it doesn't really get in the way of either of these things. But before you do put this back in, be sure to give this a good wipe down. Make sure you're not introducing a bunch of crap from your tool bench into your engine. If you're not confident in making a mess under the hood. You may also want to stuff a clean rag into that hole, or a clean paper towel into that hole right there, so that nothing falls into the engine as well. Now, all in all, it's not that tough of a chore to get in there. I really have no idea why the apparent GM actual guide for replacing that says to remove the intake manifold. I can see why it's a pain to get back there, but start to finish, it's probably 35 minutes. It really doesn't take all that long. The first time, it's going to be difficult to find your angles laying on top of the engine, and to, just feel your way around back there. If you have to do it again, it's simple, quick, easy. It definitely doesn't take several hours and removing the intake to do it. So if that really is GM's instructions for doing so, it's a ripoff. Don't take it into them to do it. This is something you can do yourself. So once you get those 3 lines back on, and make sure this line is outside of this line, because otherwise these two will rub together. But once you get those lines back on, you can get your posts back on, and you're good to go. Just reset that error, or that OBD2 code with your reader, or wipe it out, run it for a little while, make sure your oil pressure is back to normal and responding properly, and just keep an eye on it. If it starts to happen again, you can come right back in here, pull that filter screen again, and check it. If the filter screen is clean, then you may have something else going on. The big difference between a bad oil pressure sensor, or oil pressure sending unit, some people call it, and just a clogged filter screen like that, is that with the clogged filter screen, as you're driving, the oil pressure will slowly fall, and like I mentioned before, it will be very soggy when it responds to you stepping on the throttle. It will go up. If you step on it, it will go up, and then it will slowly start to make its way down again. You step on the throttle, it'll go up, not quite as high, and it'll make its way down again until it hits 0. But if you turn off the engine, let the oil drain back down, turn it back on, oil pressure sensor will be right up to the top, or oil pressure will be back up to the top. With the oil pressure sensor itself, a lot of times you'll see it'll just instantly drop to 0, or it'll bounce up and down, up and down, up and down, and it won't be that slow fade into nothingness. So I hope this helped out. Again, this is my second attempt at this video for the same thing. I'm actually using a different app, or an app on the iPhone, so that I can switch the cameras around. Give it a try. It's great. It's called Video Cam. Lets you switch and pause video. I try to include in this video how to remove each one of the clips, and just little extra bits. If there's anything else you'd like me to add, or any questions about the video, just post it in the comments. I'll try to respond to it if I see it. Otherwise, I hope this helped. It took a while cutting some knuckles, doing it my first time, and I want to help out anyone else experiencing the same thing so that they don't have to struggle with it in 5 below weather. But thanks for watching, and good luck with your truck.